Halito, everyone. Welcome back to Choctaw. This week, we have our wonderful interim director, Misty Madbull. And so she's our Choctaw this week. And she's going to be giving a presentation about our Historic Preservation Department. If you've ever wondered, what do they do in a TIPO office, you are about to find out. So Misty's going to give a presentation, and and I will be going through the slides with her. So, and if you have any questions as she's kind of talking, feel free to put those into the chat. All right, Misty, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you, Megan. Halito, as Megan stated, I'm Misty Madbull, Interim Director for the Historic Preservation Department. We fall under the umbrella of Cultural Services, housed here in our new Choctaw Cultural Center in Durant, Oklahoma. Today, I'll be talking about our Historic Preservation Department, the 6 programs we have, and how the laws within the National Historic Preservation Act help our staff protect our history, cultural, sacred, and historic sites, and ultimately, our sovereignty. Please advance. I would like to share about this important department, historic preservation, came to be within our tribal government. The National Historic Preservation Act was enacted in 1966 to create the National Park Service's National Register of Historic Places to coordinate and support public and private efforts to identify, evaluate, and protect America's historic and archaeological resources. This means to me, this gave the states and tribes the responsibility to list their own sites within their state or tribal boundaries for preservation. If a project was to be federally funded, they would have to go through a Section 106 process. Please advance. On the state level, the U.S. National Park Services designates responsibilities, duties, and functions to a state historic preservation officer, or SHPO. They then lead the state's efforts for preservation. The Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma petitioned to have this responsibility in 2004 on tribal trust lands within the territorial boundaries of the Choctaw Nation's 10.5 counties under the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 101(b)(3). This meant that our tribal historic preservation officer would take on the duties and responsibilities that the state office had. Today, our thriving department is a result of the hard work and foundation laid by our early predecessors. Currently, our THPO, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, Dr. Ian Thompson, serves our community as Senior Director, overseeing many programs, including the daily workings of the Historic Preservation Department, our Section 106 compliance work, the Wheelock Academy Museum, and the Capitol Museum, and the Grow and Hope Initiative. The National Historic Preservation Act set criteria for the protection of historic properties, including buildings and surrounding land. It is the THPO's responsibility to ensure that these criteria are carefully considered for each site location to determine if it's eligible to be included in the National Register of Historic Places. One of the main benefits that we get to see having this responsibility for our tribe is that we get to evaluate these properties from a Choctaw perspective and what their loss might mean to our community. He considers information like their significance within our community, the religious significance, if they are close to Choctaw burials, and if they are places of importance in Choctaw history. In this role, we have the ability to maintain our sovereignty, making arguments for protection of these important cultural resources for our tribe, not just here in our Oklahoma boundaries, but also in our homeland. Being a removed tribe, this is very important. Please advance. Some of our programs grew out of the responsibilities and duties we assumed from the state. Probably the most direct program would be our Section 106. As I stated earlier, if a project is to be federally funded, it will need to go through a Section 106 review. In our homeland, of Mississippi, Alabama, along the Choctaw Trail of Tears corridors, and in Oklahoma, Choctaw country, the landscape is dotted with reminders of our ancestors' presence. These reminders include archaeological sites, burials, sacred places, and artifacts. Unique and irreplaceable, these entities are threatened on a daily basis through looting, development, and the progression of time. Today, our Section 106 program annually consults on anywhere from 1,800 to 2,000 federally funded projects within our 9-state region to ensure that these projects do not disturb Choctaw ancestral sites. The department also regularly consults with state agencies, tribal members, and general public to protect Choctaw sites on non-federal land. If you're interested in the cultural resource laws that power a 106 program, like the American Religious Freedom Act and the Archaeological Resources Protection Act, please reach out to our Section 106 staff for more information. This program is led by our Senior Compliance Officer, Lindsay Ballou, and her 2 associates, Karen Downen and Maddie Curry, who split up the project reviews for our 9-state area. Please advance. Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma's area of historic interest is defined as the geographic area in which Choctaw historic sites are known to be or likely be located on the landscape, whether it be in or outside our current boundaries. Our historic sites include, but are not limited to, sacred sites, traditional cultural properties, burials, earth mounds, villages, campsites, churches, schools, historic buildings, trails, and to any information contained within our oral history, archaeological research, historic maps, and interviews with elders, and any other relevant source. This area is subject to change based on findings of new evidence. Please advance. Knowing our area of historic interest, this helps us to have a successful consultation. The Historic Preservation is engaged in ongoing cooperative consultations with federal and state agencies and local governments. And whenever appropriate, we'll advise and assist other members of the historic preservation community in carrying out their responsibilities. We maintain a cooperative government-to-government relationship with all federal agencies and entities, including the Secretary of Interior and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. And we also maintain a cooperative relationship with state agencies, local governments, and other individuals. To be clear, our department does not take over all the state responsibilities, but our Tribal Historic Preservation Officer is the official representative for the purpose of Section 106. This means that all agencies must consult with the THPO in lieu of the SHPO regarding undertakings occurring on or affecting historic properties on tribal lands. Our THPO delegates these responsibilities to our well-trained staff to review projects prior to our approval. Please advance. Once the agency determines under 36 CFR 800.3A that the project is an actual federal undertaking, they then will send the scope of the project to Lindsay and her team with everything they need to review the project to determine if there is a potential for damage of any kind. Our Section 106 protocol is then enacted. They compare the area of potential effect, APE, with the tribe's area of historic interest to see if it is located within our area of historic interest. If the AP is located within our area of historic interest, the project will be reviewed to determine its likelihood of impacting a site that the Choctaw Nation considers to be potentially eligible for National Register of Historic Places. During this review, our Section 106 will determine one of the following. If it's no historic properties affected, that means no properties eligible for the National Register or known or likely exist within the APE, then there's no adverse effect. A historic property is located within the AP, but the proposed project will not have a negative impact on that area. Then there's the adverse effect. That's where a historic property or site is located within the AP, and then the proposed project likely to have a negative impact on it. In the case of an adverse effect, this must be mitigated. There you go. Choctaw Nation's preference for mitigation from most favorable to least favorable are altering the scope of the project so that there's no adverse effect, moving the project so it doesn't have to impact on historic site, or mitigating the adverse effect by data recovery. In the case, the proposed work should be formalized in a memorandum of agreement. It is when we find ourselves mitigating these adverse effects, the hard work we put into building these strong relationships we worked hard to build are most important. Our Section 106 program staff diligently work each day to build relationships with both our tribal members, partners with similar interests, protecting sites in and around our homeland. They work with the local, state, and federal agencies with projects that could potentially destroy these sites. Each consultation is different, and each solution is unique, but our Section 106 staff are passionate about the preservation efforts. Finding themselves on calls advocating with other tribal representatives day to day can be hard, but they do a fantastic, wonderful job. I cannot stress that enough. Please advance. Thank you. Our Section 106 program also includes our Tower Construction Notification System, or TCNS program. Through a nationwide programmatic agreement, the Federally Communications Commission transferred to federally recognized tribes the responsibility of reviewing these towers permitted by the FCC and making determinations under the National Historic Preservation Act. Although no tribes were given the opportunity to sign or not to sign this agreement, it is still binding. Therefore, the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma reviews all non-excluded TCNS projects. Communication tower construction projects that are located with area interest to determine if they have the potential for impacting Choctaw historic sites that are potentially eligible for inclusion on the National Register. Please advance. Our Tribal GIS, Geographic Information System, assists us with our Section 106 work. It is an important integral resource for our team members. It is led by lead GIS specialist David Batten and GIS technician Gabriel McCarty. The department relies on current and developing technologies as tools to learn more about Choctaw history and to better protect important historic and cultural places. They use GPS and GIS tools, hardware and software, to help manage and record locations of Choctaw historic and cultural sites. When there is an archaeological site found, they go out with our ARC team and physically record the boundaries of the archaeological site. They also piece plot artifacts that are found and record other geospatial database to create detailed maps back in the office for reports. Please advance. The Tribal Archaeology Program proactively performs archaeological surveys to locate, document, and physically protect sites within the 10.5 counties. Sites ranging from 1950s homesteads to Native American campsites dating back 10,000 years have been surveyed and recorded by program staff. The program has also responds to reports of archaeological site vandalism and grave desecration. They also perform cultural resource surveys, background research for Choctaw Nation construction projects in order to meet federal preservation law and requirements. They provide the THPO with sufficient information to make sound determinations of eligibility for properties located on the tribal trust lands. This helps our Choctaw tribal members in the 10.5 counties get their services that they need. Please advance. Our community outreach program is also a direct responsibility we take from the National Historic Preservation Act. In the Act, our Tribal Historic Preservation Office Community Outreach Program is to provide public information, education, and training, and technical assistance in historic preservation. However, our program has flourished from that simple role to the many classes, presentations, and engagements we see today. Our community outreach program is led by Joseph Wolf, and he is assisted by his 2 associates, Jennifer Byram and Megan Baker. This program regularly answers questions from the interested public concerning a wide range of subjects and activities. This through telephone, person, and written correspondence. In addition to these responsibilities, our community outreach program performs research, holds presentations, classes, site visits, and publishes Itifabasa articles monthly in the Bisquick. It is through their research that we preserve our cultural tradition and history. For instance, in revitalizing our Choctaw pottery, traditional pottery, we have tribal members that are now able to carry out this knowledge and ability to make this pottery the same way our ancestors did 2,000 years ago. This tradition is close to my heart because my aunt started going to these classes when they started up, and she then introduced it to my girls and I, and we were able to make a connection with her personally because we had that time to come together and then make this art, make pottery and make this art. So this is something that we, the girls and I, hold really close to our hearts. So I'd like to take the time to go over a few other things our outreach staff has in progress. There's our textile group. A few years ago, Jennifer Byram reawoken our textile traditions. She did her research, started classes that were held in person monthly, pre-COVID. And in her classes, she taught how to process dog bane, how to spin textiles, how to do traditional dyes, how to twine. She just had a vast array of information. So those classes were really, really well interesting, and they took off pretty good. And through this tradition, her and her class actually created the buffalo wool skirts that you see on the slide. This wool skirt will, along with a few others, will be exhibited here in the Cultural Center. This is one of the first ones that our community has made in many, many years. I couldn't tell you how many years. Jennifer continued to hold her monthly classes virtually these past months, and she recently wrapped it up a few weeks ago, and in hopes of starting again next year. Megan Baker and Jennifer also work with a research group out of the Pushmataha area. Pre-COVID-19, they would go to the different museums in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and actively seek out Choctaw knowledge to give back to our department, where we could store it in our database and pass it on to the public whenever needed. Joe has a church and a school project that he's continued to work on by locating and documenting where each and every old school or church is within our 10.5 counties. He has also started a virtual tour that can be found on our Historic Preservation Facebook page. We actually call him On the Go Joe. He is the guy to talk to when our department is needing to go to schools, community centers to do Choctaw games, demonstrations, presentations, or just to share stories. Anytime that you need anything like that, please reach out to Mr. Joseph Wolf. I'd like to take a minute to thank Megan Baker, who has been a huge asset to our department, and she has brought us a wealth of knowledge and ideas. One being these Choctaw Tusholi talks. She gets Choctaws and Choctaw scholars that are throughout the U.S. and brings them to us virtually. Thank you so much, Megan. I really appreciate this. If you are interested in any of these services, please reach out to our community outreach team. Please advance. Perhaps the most sacred duty performed by the department is the repatriation and reburial of our ancestors. Their remains have been taken from the earth over the last 150 years and placed in collections and museums. The Choctaw Nation Historic Preservation Department, under the leadership of a 10-member NAGPRA advisory board, regularly repatriate our ancestors' burial objects, sacred objects from federal collections, and respectfully buries them as our ancestors originally intended. The law that federal agencies, including institutions and museums that receive federal funding, had 5 years to complete an inventory of their entire collection and publish in the Federal Register of human remains, funerary items, and the items of cultural patrimony that they owned. The vast majority did not meet this deadline. There are several that are still out of compliance with this order 30 years later. This law was brought about to help our ancestral remains to be treated with respect and basic level of human rights as they are housed in the institutions. Something until 1990 was not even considered. It also opens up consultation with these institutions in hopes of repatriating them back to the affiliated tribe. Our NAGPRA liaison is Deanna Bird. She researches collections across the United States and works with the curation staff to consult about our ancestors and their funerary items with the goal of repatriation and reburial. Many of the southeastern tribes share this goal and have their own NAGPRA programs. We work closely with them, and in the past couple of years, formed the STAR Alliance, Southeastern Tribal Alliance for Repatriation and Reburial. We are currently working on a website that will help with consultation across the United States, and we hope to have this out early next year. Please advance. In an effort to preserve Choctaw history and traditions, as well as respect those who have passed, our cemetery restoration program has been working for many years to locate, preserve, and protect Choctaw burial sites inside and out of the Choctaw Nation. It is the policy of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma to adhere to all Oklahoma burial statutes with regard to cemeteries. The cemetery program gets many calls every day pertaining to families inquiring on how they can find where their family cemetery is located. Our assistant director, Skylar Robinson, is the head of the cemetery restoration program. He will call the members back, ask specific questions, and have them fill out different forms. If our GIS database has information, he will then assist them with clearing, cleaning, and fencing the area one time, and then it will be the family's responsibility for the upkeep. If the information isn't in the database, he will perform the GPR, ground penetrating radar process, and try to locate the burials that way. If you would like to make more if you'd like more information, please contact Skylar Robinson. Please advance. So working here and coming into this new position has really helped my passion grow for my Choctaw heritage and culture. You know, growing up, I grew up with my Choctaw grandma, and so I knew how important it was, and I know somewhat of where we come from. So coming to this department has really opened up a lot more information, and it has made me a lot more prideful in who we are as Choctaw people. I talk with my kids often about how important the work we do in our department for our tribe to keep our sovereignty, culture, and who we are as people alive and well. I hope that I have given you a little bit more understanding of what we do in our Choctaw Nation Historic Preservation Department. I would like to take a minute just to tell you what an amazing group of people we have working for us. Each and every one of these people have a wealth of Choctaw knowledge that they bring. They have passion for their work. For the work that they do. They're generally awesome, hard-working group of people, and I couldn't ask for anything more. Well, I say that right now, but eventually it may happen, but not right now. So, guys, don't worry. Um, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us at any time. We are more than willing to help anybody. Thank you for your time. Dakoki.
Yakoki, Misty, thank you for your presentation. That was so great. And it's really crazy to kind of see how much historic preservation department. I was talking with my friend and she's the TIPO over for the Potawatomis in Michigan. One of them, I can't remember which one, but she used to be the one person in her office, and we have such a big kind of office. So she handled all of the kind of responsibilities of what our department does in one person. And so I think this was really great to kind of show how much work there is to do in a historic preservation office. And also like kind of the potential of it. Like if you're able to have more staff and have more people, you can do a lot more with the kind of community and engagement and kind of all of that stuff. So I thought that was really helpful. So if you guys have any questions, now is the time to drop them in the chat box or the Q&A. So go ahead and do that. And then I also have some questions that we've kind of prepared for Misty. So we're kind of wondering, why was the Historic Preservation Act enacted in 1966?
Well, President Johnson at the time, he looked around and saw that, with the roads widening and the cars, we had to have cars going down the road and the roads widening, all these buildings started getting torn down. And he got to looking around and noticed that, we're losing our history. We're losing, our heritage. So they did a study, and then they come out with this broad outline of the National Historic Preservation Act. And as more people got to looking at it and they talked about it, it was another way of preserving history, and then really for towns to have some revenue coming in through tourism. So that's when it was passed in 1966.
Nice. So we also very recently heard that Deb Holland, who is a Laguna Pueblo woman, was nominated by President-elect Biden to serve as the Secretary of Interior, which is insane and crazy and amazing news. And so we work through the kind of Department of the Interior, tribal governments kind of, and so we're kind of wondering, what are the requirements of the Secretary of Interior standards on being a tribal historic preservation officer?
Well, let's see. The requirements to be a tribal historic preservation officer, I believe there's an application process, The chief has to put this in, and then the chief will designate a person within the tribe, and then they will have to come up with a historic preservation plan and submit all of that.
Okay. So what is the criteria to register a historic property or place on the National Register of Historic Places?
Okay. This is kind of a, okay. So the property must be associated with events that made a significant contribution to the big patterns of our history. That must be associated with the lives of a person of significance in our past. So they had to have done something really important. They must have distinctive characteristic, whether it be type, period, method of construction, or represent the work of a master architect. And then there's one more. The property must show or may be likely to have important information to history or prehistory. And those are the criteria.
All right, sounds good. So Sue Pohl asks, what are some reasons that museums don't return remains after kind of all of these years?
So one of the reasons that they don't return remains, sometimes there's a lot of different reasons really, but sometimes it could be due to over, like a person who was working with us no longer works there, so then a new person comes in and they really don't know what the person before them was doing. So that's one of them. Another one is they're new to the whole process, and they really don't know how to go about trying to give these remains back. So that's one of the things that Deanna and I are working on, is educating these institutions on how to do proper consultation. And like I said, there's a vast array of reasons. But if you'd like to know more precise information, please give Deanna Bird a holler, and she can help you out with that.
Yes. Summer Shin asks, will the tribe be recruiting and offering scholarships for museum studies, archivists, archaeologists for our tribal students?
The Tribal Museum, as of right now, I have no information on that, but I can definitely, if you will send me your information, I can get a hold of our cultural manager over the Cultural Center, and then our other museum managers, and we can get you the information you need. But that is a good idea.
Yes, we could always use more archivists. This is what I've been saying. There are just so many archival documents, so many things to keep track of. I would love for Choctaws to come and work with us and help us up with that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Let's see. Sarah mentions when she interviewed docents at the Detroit Institute of Arts, their Native American collection found loan from collectors, and they worked around returning items by keeping the artwork unknown. Oh, interesting. So interesting.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
Oh, she was just letting us know about how they avoided returning items. They were just like, oh, we can't attribute it to a crime, so wouldn't have to repatriate. That's what it seems some are saying. Okay. So Alan Dillingham says, some years ago, I tried to visit the site of Armstrong Academy. I was shocked to learn that it was inaccessible because it was on private property. Have the Choctaws done anything to gain control of this important historic site?
That's a good question. As of right now, I don't believe we have moved forward on anything like that, but we do. Joe has went out and surveyed the site, looked at it, and we put it on our map. But we do this with permission from the landowner.
Jennifer asked, where do you see Choctaw Historic Preservation going in the coming years? Upcoming projects and such. Thanks for covering so much stuff.
Well, I see that we're going to give Jennifer a lot more responsibilities. No, I'm just kidding. Many more projects. Well, like I said, I would like to continue working on the projects that Joe has with, as far as the schools and sending, really documenting the old churches. That's one of the things that I hold close to me, is because, growing up, we went to an old Choctaw church, and listening to Joe say, okay, I went to this church, I went and documented this church and this church. And I'm like, oh man, I know these churches because we used to go to them, growing up. So that's great. And then we also have the homestead project that we have just recently started. So that's exciting. And we just want to get information from Choctaw tribal members that have lived around this 10 and a half counties to just get their stories of, where they lived, where they went to school, just any information that they'd like to give us. We eventually would like to make a map to give to each community, and then to show where all these homesteads were throughout the 10 and a half counties.
It's very
yeah. And one of the things is if the physical properties are still standing, we'd like to get pictures and all that stuff. So it's really exciting. It's just now starting, and so I hope to see people, getting a hold of us and telling us their stories.
Yes. Misty's email is right here, and you all have her phone number, so give her all the calls and emails. Because I know everything. Oh, Ian, who is our TIPO officer, he says that at Armstrong Academy, we restored the cemetery. So don't worry about the cemetery.
Thank you.
He also asked, how might Choctaw Nation becoming a reservation impact the work that the Historic Preservation Department is able to do?
That is a good question also. So how it's going to impact us becoming a reservation, I think it'll help with our NAGPRA process, because then we'll be able to not only have it within our 10 and a half counties, but it'll also go throughout Oklahoma, with the, outside of our boundaries also. And it'll also help with private landowners. But I'm sure there's more. Again, if you would like more information, please reach out to Dr. Ian Thompson.
Yeah, I think in my mind it would be that you have so much to deal with the private landowners that it seems like the reservation status might help a little bit more with that and give us a little more leeway in a way. But that's just conjecture. I'm not a lawyer, so. Misty, have you seen a growing interest in the historic preservation program now that the cultural center is coming? And do you need a staff member in the homeland? Just for Mike off, he asked this question.
Mike, we would love to have you. Yes, but unfortunately not right now. Maybe in the coming future, I'm sure that we will have some openings, and we would love to have anybody who is really passionate and really has an interest for Choctaw people.
Yeah. What advice, this is from Maddie, what advice would you give to young Choctaws? Someone asked a question and moved it. Okay. What advice would you give to young Choctaws who are thinking about going into historic preservation work?
What advice? I talk to my kids and their friends a lot about what we do, and it's really just again, have that passion, of who we are and as Choctaw people, and just learn as much as you can from your elders growing up. I think that's one of the things, because the education side, you could always go to school for this, but having that passion is something that is internal, and that it's just something you have to have.
I would definitely agree. I feel like that's kind of what really gave me my own drive to work for historic preservation. Like just knowing my family's history, knowing what my grandma used to do, and be like, she was a rowdy Choctaw woman, so I'm going to be the same way. Yeah, I think that would be important. Jennifer Spires asks, where can I go to research Tushka Female Institute? Or do you know more stuff about that, Misty?
Tushka Female Institute.
Mm-hmm.
My best bet would be go to talk to Joseph Wolf, and we could get information from him. I'm not really familiar with that right now, but I will ask and talk to him myself and get to know more about that. Thank you for the question.
I'm sure as you guys go through the presentation, there's just so much stuff that Historic Preservation Office kind of has to know about. And so we all have our own kind of specialties. And
yes,
we don't know and we do know.
That's the great thing about our group, is that we don't know it all, but we do have people who have that specific information. So you guys are awesome.
Yes, thanks. Let's see, any more questions? You guys are on fire today. Love it. Well, I still have some more questions while you guys think. So if we find an archaeological site or an artifact, what would we do with it? And I'm assuming if you found it in the 10.5 counties.
So what we would like for you to do is really just to leave it there. I mean, if you found something, you can pick it up, look at it, and just place it back to where you found it. Because essentially this one piece could be just a piece, and it could lead to more pieces, and then ultimately a site, and we don't know how big that site could be. So if you find something, we ask that you please leave it there. If you would like to put it back, kind of bury it, hide it a little bit, that'd be great. If it's something that you would like to know about and get more information, I would reach out to our archaeological program, and then you can talk to them, give them the information, and if it's something that they are interested in, then they would go out and look themselves, and really just to see how big it is, how big the site is, or whether it's one piece or a million pieces. Because someone once told me it's like a puzzle piece. If you take that one piece, then the rest of the puzzle, which is our history, we're missing that one piece. So we ask that you just at least place it back.
Kristen, who is our tribal archaeologist, she says it would also be important to document where you found the object and take a picture. Feel free to send that to her.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Kristen.
You also mentioned that the archaeological program helps members get services in addition to assisting with construction projects. What services are these?
So when when our archaeology program gets these projects, that's usually when the Choctaw Nations help build houses or anything like that. They then go in and help. They survey the land, and then they do septic tanks, water lines, and anything that is ground disturbing. So so it just helps them, be able to move into their home and have working water and plumbing.
Cool, cool. So how many of our ancestors are in museums today still?
Excuse me? You cut
Oh,
out. I'm sorry.
so sorry. You mentioned that there are Choctaw ancestors in museums when you kind of talked about the next.
Oh, okay.
And so we were wondering how many of our ancestors are still in those museums?
Man, as of right now, we're not sure of the total number, but Deanna has a project going. It's called No Stone Unturned, and she's going to each federally funded institution throughout the United States and asking, for their inventory. As of right now, she's a quarter of the way, and there's hundreds so far. But as she gets through all of this, and that's something that she works diligently on. So as she works through all of this, we possibly could see in the thousands. But that is mine and hers, and my goal is to try to get our ancestors repatriated. But I don't know if it'll be done within our lifetime. But, we're going to try our best. That's something that we hold close.
A lot of work. It's a lot of emails.
Yes, definitely.
If I'm still using my family cemetery, will the cemetery restoration program still come out and clean it and put up a fence?
No, I don't believe so. I think they have to be inactive. But if for more information, please give Skylar Robinson a call, and he can help you with any of that. But I really do believe it has to be inactive.
Cool. So will the new cultural center have demonstration classes and presentations that you kind of talked about that your department does?
Let me see. Yeah, our team is in collaborations with their education team, and we're trying to come up with a content that would be but we don't know what that is yet. But as we get closer to the date, I'm sure we'll get a more concrete lineup going. But yes, we will be working with them.
Awesome. In your presentation, you also mentioned that the TIPO was also responsible for the Wheelock Museum, the Capitol Museum, and the Growing Hope Initiative. Could you talk a little bit more about each of those?
Sure. So the Wheelock Museum is located in Millerton, and it was built, I believe, in 1835. And this was a missionary school for Choctaw girls. And it is still open, and they have the museum that is open, and that is headed up by Wanda. Oh my goodness, her name just Howard. Thank you. I was like, oh my goodness, names. Okay, and then there's the Choctaw Nation Museum. This is located at Tuskahoma. It was built in 1884. All right. It was an original council house and is one of our first museums, and it holds many Choctaw exhibits. And Regina does a good job changing those from year to year. It's really an amazing place. And then we have the Growing Hope Initiative, and that's located also at Tuskahoma. And this was started a few years ago, and it's led by Jackie Putnam. Let's see. Her and her associate grow Hochulma, which is Choctaw tobacco, Smith peas, Choctaw sweet potato squash, and then lamb's quarters. And she's also doing a seed. She mails out seeds. If you ever need any kind of Choctaw seeds, please reach out to her.
Sounds good. That is all the questions that I have prepared. Does anyone else out there have any questions? Anything you wanted to add, Misty?
If there are no questions, thank you. I really enjoyed this. You know, I love my job. I love my people, and I love my work family. And I thank you for giving me this time to share my knowledge. Thank you, guys. Yakoki.
Thank you, Misty, for joining us. Thank you so much. That was a great talk. Learned a lot. Hope you guys did too. And so our next Chocolate Sholi is going to be on Thursday, January 7th, starting in the new year. We're starting a new kind of sub-series that I'm calling Choctaw Elder Stories. And so we're going to have Choctaw elders talk about what was it like growing up and what are the kinds of experiences that you had as Choctaw people throughout your kind of lives, and learn their kind of history so we can learn more about wider Choctaw history. And so that first guest is going to be Robert Baker of Baptiste, who also just happens to be my dad. So that should be fun. So we look forward to seeing you again in the new year. Thanks, everyone. Yakoki.